Tonight we remember those immortal words from movies past.
Both keys at the same time? Oh!
No, sorry, the other words.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Quite. Welcome to Macclevoid at the movies. That's how it used to go. Doesn't go that way anymore, does it? Now it's more sort of down, 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 down. Now, do you intuit the difference, I wonder? One is grand, operatic, mythic, grandiose. It says this is a fucking big movie. And it's deep when it needs to be deep, and it will be joyful when it needs to be joyful, and it will be frivolous when it needs to be frivolous, but it's going to be big. It's going to be so big, it's going to encompass all of those things. But the guitar version, the that's sort of superficial, isn't it? That's, more like a karaoke version. What might that connote? Well, in this review, we're going to discuss the difference between the two. And then some. If I look somewhat irradiated, by the way, it's because the sun has the opposite effect on me than it does on Superman. Superman gains strength and vitality from the sun. The sun destroys me, destroys my body. The sun, I know it keeps me alive, but it's also my kryptonite. I suppose you could say that's a contradiction. Life's full of those, isn't it? So, Superman. We've had the grand mythic version. We've had the pastiche of the grand mythic version. We've had the angsty, teen, depressive, I'm going to slit my wrists version. And now we've got the comic book version. Now you're going to say, hang on a minute, wait a minute, hold the fuck on. They're all from the comic books, aren't they? It's all DC adaptation. No. See, the 1978 Richard Donner movie was obviously from the DC comics, but it's an attempt to take that character and put him in our world. None of the nonsense and shit from the rest of DC's back catalogue came with him. It was just him on his own. Hi, Superman. Welcome to planet Earth, with all of its constraints. This is the first attempt, essentially, at putting the world of DC Comics properly, fully, unapologetically on screen. This is the balls out version, the silly version, the sci-fi orientated version. And after Marvel, after 20,000 years of MCU movies, I think we're on movie 4,000 now in the MCU. James Gunn, who himself pushed Marvel in that direction with Guardians of the Galaxy, reasoned, not unreasonably, that the audience were ready. They'd seen a universe unfold. And even if it was more pleasurable to see it unfold gradually, to start in a more grounded place and end up in a multiverse, he thinks, well, no, there's no point, with all of that build-up, because audiences have been so indoctrinated to expect all of this multiverse madness now that if they don't get it straight up, they'll be bored. What would be the point of setting a Superman in the real world and then introducing elements of DC gradually? My God, we'll be here 10 years. don't have time for that. The superhero cycle isn't going to last another 10 years. It's on its knees now. So, this Superman drops you straight in. The work of the first 10 Marvel movies is done in a single caption at the beginning. 3 million years ago, metahumans came to Earth. 3 years ago, Superman announced himself to the world. Blah, 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 blah. That's it. It's all done in preamble. All in a bit of text. And then you're dropped into a universe full of high concept shit, like pocket universes, monsters, dimensional rifts, all of that sort of thing. It's all pre-established. It's all been going on for quite some time. We're dropped into Superman's battles in media res. And because we've been marveled to death, we don't think anything of it. All of this would have been very outlandish in Christopher Reeve's day. Remember him? But then the object was to invest in a character and his place in our world, not the world of DC Comics exactly. Apparently, it's now not possible to inhabit the latter and still enjoy the grandeur of the simple character dynamics of the former. You have to just... It's all or nothing in the new DCU. And, we'll come back to this. One could argue that's a missed opportunity. Wouldn't it have been a wonderful point of differentiation between this and the MCU if DC was a place you went to for real movies? And by what do I mean by real movies? I mean movies which are long and deep and self-contained and have real humanity at their heart, real character. Do you remember what that was like? Do you remember when it was just us and a single superhero? It was only a generation ago. But we can't have that anymore. Because the kids with their fucking TikToks and all the rest of it would be bored out of their minds, wouldn't they? If they had to sit through real emotional moments. That's the thinking, not my thinking. But allegedly, apparently, implicitly, the thinking of those behind Superman and the new DCU. It's got to be a frenetic, kinetic, bang, 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 fill the screen full of action and incident type of movie. And the irony is that makes it feel less like a movie and more like an action-packed TV pilot for a Justice Gang TV series. And if I were at home and I was on Netflix and I saw this as part of a new ridiculous $500 million 10-part Superman, his Super Friends TV show, I would be compelled to watch on because there's nothing innately awful about what's been done here. Superman is a nice guy. He's sweet and sentimental and corny and kind, and he's got real heart. He's not the sort of brooding musculature that Henry Cavill was in Zack Snyder's universe. This is Superman as you remember him. And he's a pleasure to be around. He's a bit tetchy sometimes, a little bit defensive, a little bit insecure, and he's not quite as strong as he used to be because James Gunn wants him to be just vulnerable enough to get the shit kicked out of him ever so once in a while, and for us to feel that he could be killed, that there is that danger there, that maybe he can't do it all alone. He needs his super friends to help him. Else what's the point of having super friends if you can do it all by yourself? No, it's alright, I've got this. I'll just spin the world backwards and undo all of the villain's changes. Nice of you all to come out, Mr. Terrific, Hawk Girl, spindly thing, but I can handle it. Well, in this movie, he can't quite handle it all on his own. So this is probably a good decision from Gunn. Make him a bit weaker. But here's the thing. It feels a bit like TV. And there's nothing wrong with TV. I like TV. But on Netflix, you don't have to pay, 15 quid per episode. Why do we go to the cinema? To see movies. Right? Right? To see something big, grandiose, mythic. I don't know, like, just spitballing, but like the old Superman movie.
I ask you now to pronounce judgment on those accused. On this mindless aberration, whose only means of expression are wanton violence and destruction. On the woman Ursa, whose perversions and unreasoning hatred of all mankind have threatened even the children of the planet Krypton. Finally, General Zod, once trusted by this council, charged with maintaining the defense of the planet Krypton itself, chief architect of this intended revolution and author of this insidious plot to establish a new order amongst us, with himself as absolute ruler.
Like Richard Donner's movie of 1978, which then was thought to be kind of not especially serious next to the more adult fare of the 1970s, a bit flippant, a bit, childish. But fuck me, looks like the Odyssey today. That's how infantilized film culture has become. That's how poor movies now are. That something that was considered a flick off the wrist, admittedly a very grandly mounted flick off the wrist back in 1978, today feels almost profound by comparison. And I'm sorry to tell you, though as much as I enjoyed James Gunn's Superman on a very superficial level, I have to say, I thought there were probably greater moments of pathos in the quest for peace.
I always know when Superman's in trouble.
Superman, something's happened to him?
Well, everybody's saying that he's dead, but it can't be true. I just know it. I feel it in my heart. I think he just needs help.
Well, wherever he is, Lois, I'm sure he'll manage.
Well, if he can't manage, and if he really is in trouble, then there's a few things I'd like to tell him. I tell him that I will always cherish the time we spent together. And I never expected anything in return. And no matter how few minutes I saw him for, it always made me happy. And I would tell him that I love him. And that I'll always love him. And that whatever happens to the world, I know that he's doing his best to make sure that it'll be all right for the rest of us.
Well, wherever he is, Lois, I know that he would want to thank you.
Why? Because that movie had Christopher Reeve. Where you have Christopher Reeve, you've got a degree of seriousness. You've got a degree of a grounded element. You've got a human element. And the screenplay is almost required to pause from time to time just to give you a little moment of character. There are two scenes in James Gunn's Superman that make you feel like that take you back to that place. The place you missed from childhood, where it was you and a character that you aspired to be and idealised up on the screen. There's a nice interview between Clark Kent and Lois Lane and Superman, which allows him to talk a bit about his personal philosophy, a bit about who he is and what he's here to do, and so on. And there's a tiny little scene with him and Pa Kent, in which he struggles with one of the movie's plot points, a fascinating plot point, which is not, I'm afraid, developed to any satisfaction. And that is the plot point that the message that Jor-El and his wife have sent with baby Kal-El to Earth. The first half tells him, you are here to look after the human race because, and do good and all of this business. A much better version of that speech, by the way, was written and performed by Marlon Brando in the original Superman. Because of, their overwhelming capacity for good, I've given them you, my only son. It's wonderful stuff. Brings a tear to the eye. But the twist in this movie is that it's only half the message. The message has been corrupted in transit. And when eventually Lex Luthor steals the other half, steals the message and has the other half decrypted and translated, does Clark discover that he was in fact sent to be our overlord, and not just that, but a rape threat to all the women on planet Earth, because he's actually here to repopulate the world with Kryptonians, spread his seed, be the ruler of all humanity and the father of the new Krypton. What a fascinating idea. And of course, not too subtle dig at sort of outlandish and ridiculous pre-modern medieval religious texts and so on. Now, if the movie had had the guts to develop that idea, boy oh boy, would it have been something special. But I'm sure that in James Gunn's contract it says Superman must not kill and Superman must definitely not rape.
Superman, tell him he won't hurt anybody. I think he's changed. No, maybe he's just sick. Superman, please get better.
Imagine if he'd been tempted. Oh, now I've got the second half of the message. Actually, I am a god, effectively. Why don't I? Why don't I do it? Why don't I experiment with my bad boy self? But he's Superman. Don't worry, kids. Don't worry, parents of kids. This is Superman. Of course, it never occurs to him to follow up on the second half of that message. But it's a fascinating element. It's the movie's one substantial idea. Just as Man of Steel had one good idea, namely that everyone on Krypton was a Superman because they were genetically engineered to do a certain thing. And the only natural born person, the only person who wasn't a Superman, was Kal-El, was Superman. That's a good idea. Not in any way explored in Man of Steel. And this idea is not explored in any way in Superman. It's just a device to turn people against Superman for a little while Lex gains the upper hand. And of course, I'm not spoiling anything by telling you that by the end of the movie, that's all been neatly resolved. So the film has one smart idea in its head, which it doesn't really develop. But the point of that nugget, that seed, really is to produce a bit of child-friendly politicking. It's the idea, the pertinent message, if you like, that you shouldn't be brainwashed, by your parent culture. You shouldn't be told what to think by your parents. You be you. You do your own thing. And if it's not in your heart to do something bad, don't do it. Follow your heart. Be yourself. Be a good person. Be kind. That's the simple message in the movie. And who could begrudge it? That's a perfectly decent and progressive thing to inculcate in young minds. And this is a family movie. It's for a family audience. It's not for a lot of depressed teenagers and sad pill-popping adults like the Snyder movies. Stylistically, it's what you'd expect from James Gunn. It takes his oddball outsider shtick and it applies it to a family-friendly audience. But it's busy. There's no room for fanfare, no time for romance, none of those wonderful things which were invoked by John Williams' score as an extension of the Richard Donner movie. Here it's a distinct lightness of touch, but it's very light. So light, in fact, you almost don't feel anything. It's synth and electric guitar. It's weightless. It's breezy. It's zany. It's kinetic. And that's fine. And that's fun. And like I said, episode 1 of Superman and his super friends on Netflix, and you wouldn't bat an eyelid. You'd say, sure, let's watch episode 2. But is that enough for a movie? Is that enough for a universe? I mean, this would play very well on TV, but we're going to be asked to come back to the cinema again and again. And by the way, we do briefly meet Supergirl in this movie, and she looks like she's going to be fucking hard work, and she's the centre of the next film. I can't say I was impressed by her entrance. But look, the people who made this movie have done a very good job of marketing it, I think, in the sense that they've released a lot of little clips online. They've slowly introduced the tone of the movie to audiences through social media. They've established that Superman has a silly dog, which of course is not news to anyone who reads DC Comics. If you're a comic nerd, you'd be a bit surprised if Superman didn't have a dog. But for the general audiences, people like me who grew up with Superman on screen, these things take a little bit of adjustment because they're kind of outlandish and they don't fit in with the real world tone that Donner sort of had one foot in. If you can have a foot in a tone, which you can't. So slowly but surely, the marketing has allowed us to make that mental adjustment. It said, hey, this is going to be a cartoon. Okay? It's going to be a cartoon. Don't take it too seriously. You ain't going to feel nothing. It's going to wash over you. It's a warm bath of a movie. You're going to have fun. You're going to, walk out with a big silly smile on your face. And 12 hours later, you won't remember a thing. You'll be like Lois, the end of Superman 2, after she was kissed by Clark.
You okay? What happened?
Something happened, but I'll be fucked if I know what. That's Superman 2025. Light, fluffy, good-natured, quite earnest, a little bit carny, but basically empty. It will build, possibly, maybe as part 1 of like a 20-part narrative. It will all look very deep and very multi-dimensional by the time we get to movie 17 or whatever. But there was a time, kids, oh yes, there was a time where one could be deep and dimensional in a single film. And no one would ever need to see another and would still feel as if they'd got to know the character and his world perfectly. And if you're 20 or under, you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, do you? You sad degenerates. If you love this movie, if you are 20 and you love this movie, go and watch Superman 1978 and see what you think. Imagine you'll come back and go, oh, it was so slow, wasn't it? Lots of talking. So slow. All that talking and all that. What was all that old-fashioned music? Lots of music. It wasn't synth and electric guitar either. It was all brass and violins and cellos. If your kids say that, I think you've got tacit permission to do a Magda Goebbels on them. You know what I mean? The simple politics of this movie are good in one sense. It is a repudiation of the post 9/11 Zack Snyder bleak kind of comic book movie. It's great, I thought, that Superman cares passionately about not destroying things or hurting people. He's not down with the idea of collateral damage. You know, Henry Cavill and General Zod had a fight and it was something like 39 11s. Here, there's the exact opposite of that, where Superman, you know, while trying to stop this giant creature from falling onto a building, just about manages it, and he cracks the window of one apartment building. And that's funny. One office window is cracked. What a contrast. And he looks embarrassed by that. So I've cracked some glass here. You know, Henry Cavill would have flown through 3 blocks full of people and seen them pancake on one another before he'd have noticed. So there's none of that bleak, neck snapping, you know, building collapsing bullshit here. There are some collapsed buildings, by the way, but they're uninhabited, so it's okay. Nobody dies. That's Superman. That's what we expect to see in a Superman movie. So there are upsides to this movie. It's not all bad, you know. It's fun and its values are in the right place. Christopher Reeve would have approved, I'm sure, of the treatment of the character. Though he would have said, hang on, surely we should pause a little bit here to actually tell a story. So, Corran's wet, makes women wet, whatever his name is probably the best Superman since Christopher Reeve. He's a fine companion piece to Christopher Reeve. But Reeve's still number one. And the reason he's number one, the reason perhaps he'll always be number one, is he was fortunate to be alive and to be cast in a movie that was made by heavyweights. Written by Mario Puzo and Tom Mankiewicz, directed by Richard Donner, scored by John Williams. You know, how lucky he was to be in a movie that had all of those people behind the camera. And then you've got supporting players like Terence Stamp and Marlon Brando. Gave the movie heft, gave it weight. Unfortunately, there's nothing like that here. The 10-year-old me would have loved this movie. The 10-year-old me would probably have watched it 30 times on VHS, hired it out from the local video shop. But today, I think I'd enjoy it in the same way that I enjoy, say, Masters of the Universe. You know what I mean? It's not going to hold up as an all-timer, but it will hold up as a movie that a lot of children will have a great deal of affection for and will probably enjoy upon repeated viewings until they're about 13 or 14, by which time they'll have seen it about 40 times and will then return to it ironically in their 20s. Gunn's arguably tailored a movie that's a credible alternative to Marvel and the MCU. It's another light touch universe full of zany characters, and it could be some of them, particularly Batman. You've got the potential to go a bit darker and a bit deeper, but unfortunately, if you want to see a real movie, a movie with a heart and a head, then you're going to have to go back to the 70s, because the 1978 Superman film is still the gold standard. The DCU could have been the place we went to for superhero fare like that. Instead, it looks like we're going to get Smallville on a budget. But hey, what you going to do? Until next time, I'm Dr. Macclevoid. It's not my real name. Do fly carefully. Yeah. And bye.
Doesn't it give you kind of a shudder of electricity through you to be in the same room with me?